daffodils are very distinctive in the way that they come out of the stem, and you've got that little papery casing that kind of covers the start of the daffodil where the flower emerges from. And they're always nodding, or they're usually nodding, so your stem's going to be nodding over quite a bent angle here. And this is where the papery stuff starts. I mean, it's probably not called paper, whatever it's called. This is where it starts. And it's always this nice flowing shape. And lots of texture to it. So you've got that paper kind of that was casing it that is no longer casing it. It wants to be a bit wider. So it's quite easy to do a daffodil from the imagination because we're so familiar with seeing them. And then of course we've got this lovely trumpety shape, nice distinct shape of the daffodil itself as it starts to come out there. So we'll start with the outside petal, comes down, and then it's going to go around that trumpet shape that we've got. And of course there are so many different varieties. Some are much frillier, some have got, you know, much more character to them, different colours. I like the pheasant's eye one. This one, it's kind of, we're going to do it quite kind of droopy. So the two outside petals there, and then the one that's partially hidden by them. Make it a little bit frilly. And then we can perhaps just see one of the back ones as well, because obviously you're never going to see all the petals at once. And then the trumpet itself coming out below that, and let's make that nice and frilly edged. And again we can put more frills on with the ink pen. So I think we've got a bit of character there with those flowing lines, and you've got that flow of the papery casing and then the petals themselves. The pen that I'm using today is a uni pin, and it's a size 0.5. You don't have to use a pen if you don't want to. You could just do this in pencil and paint, but I like to put more detail in with the pen after we've got that line of the pencil to help guide us there. So I'm going to assume that the light's coming from the top, so I'll start by putting a bit of shadow underneath, because obviously if the light's coming from here it's not going to hit this side of the stem. And then when you come to put your paint on, you can even make that a bit darker as well. Let's make it really dark under here, because where it's nodding over, the light's not going to reach that area. And then this lovely flow of this papery shape that we talked about. You'll notice I use short little flicks of the pen, little lines, rather than one big solid line. It's easier to paint, it's easier to draw that way. It's much more difficult to get an accurate shape doing just one solid line. So we need some texture in this. There's lots of lines, lots of shadows, shadow under there, and it's got these lines going in this direction. Like I say, I want to make it nice and flowing, a lot of character to it. So a lot darker under here, so we can make that line under there heavier. Make more distinction here where the stem meets the paper. A few kinks and twists, a few little bits of shadows where it's folded over on itself. So you get better texture also by doing these little short lines. Again, this first petal, it's going to be dark under here where the light's not hitting from above. We all do shadows slightly different with our pen. You can cross hatch, there are different ways you can use dots. I tend to just scribble and use little lines. course, these petals have little bits of veins. Some of these lines can be the veins themselves, some can be shadows, some can be just directional lines. So they don't have to be anything specific. It's just making the whole thing more fluid, more interesting than just a linear drawing without any detailing. Okay, so this is the one behind. This is just a tiny little bit of the back petal showing here. And again, it's going to be in the shadow. And then this foreground petal here, which has got much more light on it because it's lower down. So the light's getting to that a bit better, so we don't need that to be just as shady. But it's going to be shady up here. And we still need some of those directional lines and nice fluid lines to give us a nice shape and some interest. So the petals, where they come out of the stem, where they've been attached, they start off a bit thinner and then open up. If you haven't got any yourself in your own garden to work from, usually at this time of year they're quite inexpensive in the supermarkets. I think they're about £1. You can get a bunch. Always buy the ones that are completely closed. Don't buy ones that are already starting to come out. You won't get any time from them at all. You need to buy the ones that are completely closed, and then they'll last a little bit longer. Again, some directional lines, a little bit of interest. So that's the petals, and we'll come on to doing the trumpet. And of course the trumpet itself under here is going to be in shadow, and we can put some more on when we've finished with the ink drawing. We can look back and think, do we need some extra? And maybe you're going to see both edges here. So you've got that frilly edge of the inside, but also the outside, just seeing the edge there. Again, some directional lines of the trumpet shape and some shadow here. Obviously I'm doing this quite quickly as I'm talking to you, to try and speed the videoing process up, and so that I don't bore you too much, but you could take a lot more time on getting these shadows just as you want them, and these frills. I'm just going to go over that frilly line to make it a bit more distinct. And inside here itself isn't going to be that light. It's going to be shaded as well, isn't it? So go all the way along there with some shadow. Especially closer to the inside edge. So now we've got the full shape on, let's just go back to some of the areas where the light cannot get to. So the light's not going to be able to get to here, and make it nice and dark. Don't be afraid of going too dark with your ink pen. It's going to emphasize the highlights. So all these areas where the light can't possibly get to need to be quite dark. And also you can sharpen up some lines of the actual form if you want to emphasize the form, the shape. So form's just another word for shape really, but if you want to emphasize the line and the form there, again just press a bit harder on your pen. Okay, and I think probably that's enough for now for that. Like I say, you'll have more time, take your time. Look back at the daffodil that you've got in front of you if you don't want to do it from your imagination like this, and take some time getting it as you want it. And then you need to leave your ink to dry just for a few moments, just so you're not going to smudge it when you erase those pencil lines and put your colour on. Be gentle doing your erasing and use a really good eraser, nothing that's going to tear at your paper. So it's worth investing in something that's nice and soft and not too abrasive. Okay, so just gently get rid of all those pencil guidelines. As I said earlier, this is a mixed media pad, but of course you could use watercolour paper as well. I've mixed three colours up. I've got yellow here on its own, a nice bright yellow from the Senellier set, and then I've got yellow with some green in, and then I've got this ochre brown colour for the papery bit here. We need another colour for the stem actually, but I'll just pop that in here. Just some green for the stem. And I'm going to add a touch of blue to that, because if you can imagine them, they're quite bluey, a bluey green are the daffodil stems. So we just need a little bit of that. So we'll start with that. So you'll see I've got a nice pointy brush that's going to get into those shapes, hopefully without going over the lines. I'm really good at going over lines. I'm not a very careful colourer inner. Okay, and you can see how we've got that dark of the pen showing through there. So I should say this is a size 8, this watercolour brush here, with a nice point on it. So then the papery bit, and I'm not going to worry if these colours touch each other. Sometimes that can make nice effects if they just run into each other slightly. You'll see that blue-green running slightly into that papery colour there. And because you've got the nice strong drawing with your ink, you can be a bit more loose with your paint. And you don't need loads of paint either, because you've got that drawing. Because the last thing you want to do is cover up all that drawing. Okay. That's nice light colour, and then we're going to go with the yellow all over the rest of it really. Again, don't worry if those colours touch, doesn't matter if they flow into each other a little bit. And keep these paints all the same consistency, so that if they do touch each other and flow into each other, you're not going to get those cauliflower shapes, or blooms as you might want to call them. So keep them all with a similar amount of water in the different colours. And while that's still wet, where it's a bit more shady and in just a couple of spots, we want to put a little bit of this green on top of the petals, because you very often do get a bit of a green shade in some of the petal areas, and it's just going to give a bit of variety, make it a little bit more interesting. So just tiny touches. You don't need to overdo that. You've already got the shape there with your pen. This is just to make a little bit of interest and get those a little touch of green into that yellow. Again, while it's still wet, you might want to just go on top with a little bit more of the brown colour. Again, just where it's a bit more shady, just put a bit of a thicker mix on some of those shady areas and let it flow into that colour that's already there. Starting to dry a bit, so you can just soften the edge with a damp brush. So you can see how with very few colours and very few lines you can make a convincing daffodil. And of course, as I always say, you could go on and make this more detailed if you really wanted to, but I don't feel it needs it. I think it's just nice with just those three colours, let them blend together, a little bit where they touch, and it's just, you've got that shape there already. So you could go on and do a whole page of daffodils, and you could do them facing in different directions, so don't have them all nodding down. You could have some standing up and some facing you. Obviously then you would just be doing the circle with the petals going out. Much simpler shape to do than with the trumpet on one side like this. I hope you found that useful. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you've got any questions at all that you want to ask about drawing and painting in general, and especially with the flowers and the daffodils and the spring flowers that we have now. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back again soon.